Hello everyone. Hi, my name is Hayley Lorimer. I'm a staff member at the FMB and I want to say thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, taking time out of your busy day to be with us. Whether you're a regular FMB webinar attendee or whether you're joining us for the very first time, you're very, very welcome. And what better way to spend the afternoon actually if you've been rained off site today. It's been tipping down all day here in Yorkshire, so it's probably different in other parts of the country. At the FMB, we offer a whole range of different business services to help support our members to run profitable businesses, everything from template contracts to free of charge dispute resolution, helplines on various topics, business coaching, a whole range of services, FMB awards, for example, as well. And everything we do is for the benefit of our members, including these webinars. So the idea of the webinars is that we bring along a range of expert speakers who can help and assist FMB members by sharing some of their knowledge about different aspects of the many, many things that you as a small builder need to be on top of in your working day. So our today's speaker is Martin Trimble, who's a quantity surveyor who understands the issues that you're up against in terms of pricing and the traps you can fall into if that goes wrong. So Martin's going to share his expertise today to help you to avoid some of those. But first of all, before we get started, I am actually going to share a poll question on the screen to find out what issues are concerning you with pricing, and that'll give Martin a bit of a steer as to what's going on for you at the moment. So I'm just going to share this. Hopefully you can see this on the screen now. I don't know if you can see it yet, Martin, can you? Yeah. So,
yes, I do.
Great. So if you can click on one of those that apply to you, about increasing costs of materials, clients' unrealistic expectations, increasing cost of skilled labour, not making enough money from each job, and the time it takes to do it, or all of the above. So I'll stop talking for a second and just leave that on the screen for you to complete that, and that'll be really useful feedback for us. Okay, so I'm going to close that now because most people have completed it, and you can see that most of the people who've answered that question have said all of the above. That's more than half of the people. So that's a lot of challenges that people are dealing with in relation to pricing. So you're in the right place to get some help with those issues. And just a reminder that the webinar will run for about 45 minutes or an hour, depending how many questions we get through. You'll get a follow-up email after the session, which will include a link to the recording of the webinar and a PDF of the slides that Martin's going to share with us, and any other contact details that we might want to put in the email. So you don't have to worry about writing everything down as we go through. If you do have any questions, as we're going through the webinar, if you hover at the bottom of the screen, you'll see there's a little Q&A box down there. So just type your questions into there and we'll deal with those at the end of the presentation. And there's no such thing as a daft question. So please, if anything's occurring to you, it might well be occurring to others as well. So pop that in there. So I'm going to stop sharing that now. And I'm going to hand over to Martin to begin his presentation. Thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Hayley. I'm just going to start off. Good afternoon. I'm just going to start off by sharing my screen so you can see my presentation. So Hayley, if you can just clarify that you can see that, that'd be great.
We can see the slides, but it's not on slideshow mode, but you've just clicked that. Yeah, that's all perfect now. Thanks, Martin.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thanks for joining us. So what we're going to do today is review that pricing and estimating and how we can help and how we see that as a quantity surveyor, and hopefully help you move forward in the future to price better, make more money, save time, cover risk. So here's the contents that we're going to go through in the presentation today. So I'll give you a brief overview and introduction to who we are as magnitude quantity surveyors, go through the objectives of today's presentation, going to start off with procurement and tendering and understanding that process of pricing and obtaining a price. We're going to talk about the pricing document, how to prepare a pricing document, what that's built up of, and how to calculate overheads and profit. What to price and when to price. You know, do you price 10 jobs at a time? Do you price one? You know, let's look into what to look for there. Let's look at protection. How do you protect your company and how to get paid? And then, as Hayley said, we'll finish off with a Q&A. Hopefully, this presentation will go through all of those things that were shown on that poll, but rest assured we can have a conversation at the end, and I think Hayley's going to give out our email address as well, so if there's any pressing questions at the end that we don't get to, hopefully myself or my team can come forward and help you with that. So just moving into an introduction. So who we are. So we're an award-winning firm. We've got 3 offices. There's 16 quantity surveyors that work at Magnitude. And we have offices in Liverpool, Manchester, and you're joining me in our London office. We have a vast array of clients that we work for, from developers to private clients to contractors to commercial services. We do a wide range of quantity surveying services, from estimating, so helping people like yourselves with the estimating side of the business, contractors quantity surveying, so that's in the commercial aspect of valuations, dealing with contracts. We do bills of quantities production for the likes of tier 1 contractors like your Mace, your Balfour Beatty and the like. On the client side of things, we do employer's agent, contract administration, together with fund and bank monitoring services. Construction claims dispute resolution, we have a qualified adjudicator in-house who deals with all the problems that arise from poor documentation, poor contract, poor communication, again, things that we're going to talk about today. And then we have professional quantity surveying. So hopefully, from our variety of experience, we'll be able to guide you today and help you move forward and become more profitable and build the businesses. So just there's a couple of examples of the projects that we're working on currently. So this is 14 bespoke luxury homes in Cheshire. We do bespoke super homes, so one-off super homes for clients up and down the country. We do apartment schemes, commercial schemes. So this one you see in Trafford. We do extensions and alterations, and we do industrial manufacturing. So we've priced from all of those down to your single story extensions. So who I am, I'm the managing director of Magnitude Quantity Surveyors. I focus heavily on the estimating and contractor support. I've done for over 10 years. I've helped companies that were doing kitchen extensions, internal walls and partition jobs, who have moved into bigger extensions, bigger home building, house building. So I've been there from 50 grand extensions, as I said, up to 20 to 30 million pound estimating jobs. So today's objectives. So what I want to do today is I want you to understand tender process. I want you to understand how to prepare a pricing document and how to calculate those overheads and profit. What to price, when to price, how to mitigate risk and protect against non-payment. Also fluctuation provisions right now of fluctuating materials. How are you going to get paid for them? How do you protect against that? And what does a QS look for in a pricing document when advising a client? So take that example that we work for clients and we advise them. What are we looking for from the contractors to advise them to proceed with a certain contractor, not only on price, but on quality. Also, you know, we'll talk about what we look for in terms of diligence, the diligence that we do on a contractor. So for the purpose of this presentation, what we're going to do for the context is we're assuming that schemes are going to be around that 150 to 200k mark in construction value, and the typical projects are going to be home extensions, refurbishments that you guys and gals are looking at. So we're going to start off with procurement and tendering. And this is just basically to understand what you are doing when you're asked to price a job and what procurement is. So procurement is the overall act of obtaining goods and services from external sources, i.e. you, a building contractor, and includes deciding the strategy on how those goods are to be acquired by reviewing the client's requirements. And it's the triangle. It's the time, quality, and cost, and also their attitude to risk. So I've put some typical procurement strategies up on the page here. And they're traditional, the cost plus, and the design and build. I'm not going to spend too much time going into this section because I'll be here all day, and Hayley told me I've only got 45 minutes. But you are typically basing on a traditional procurement strategy. The client will have designed, or an architect will have designed their requirements for you as a contractor to price. The design and build strategy is what it says. You give the contractor design and build responsibility. So they are passing the risk, i.e. the client is passing the risk into a contractor to design and build out their development. Typically, that'll be your apartment schemes. That will be your industrial units, schemes of a simple nature. Cost plus, I'm sure there may be some questions coming in later on about what cost plus is, but that's a reimbursable contract. We see that a lot now on luxury bespoke homes, but that is best suited to jobs that need to act quickly, so fire damage, etc. But what you see in your procurement, the procurement strategy you follow in these simple extension refurbishment schemes is typically traditional. So you are in a traditional procurement process. Tendering, so this is different to procurement, and this is a bidding process of how to obtain the price. How actually is a contractor appointed? And again, I've put some different options up on here for a single stage, negotiated, and two stage. Typically, you will receive a set of drawings or a suite of documents from a client. Sometimes you don't. I'm sure some of you have been to properties and been asked to price things without any drawings. I'll talk about an example of how I received the price for my axial extension, and I'm sure some of you can resonate with that. But in this scenario, you are pricing on a single stage basis. A negotiated basis is good, but usually you'll need an intermediate in between you and the client to negotiate that price and feel what is right. And a two-stage basis of a tender is generally related into design and build. So just to recap, procurement basis, you are traditional and you are single stage in terms of pricing. So want to look for now what to look for in the tender pack, because what you don't want to do is continually price work without these documents, because you may be pricing for work or spending money, spending time on jobs that will never become live. So let's look for drawings and specification. Are the drawings to building control specification? Is there a specification determining what materials to use? Are there structural engineers drawings available? You don't want guesswork. You don't want to get into a situation where you're guessing what the building control specification would be, what size of steels they're going to be. Is the planning documentation in place? Does the scheme have planning, or is it subject to planning? My advice would be, if you are pricing a job and a job does not have planning yet, just wait. Just wait. Don't waste time and money pricing a job that may not even get planning. Number 3 is a schedule of work. And the reason I ask this is there a schedule of work to price against? Because what you want to do is price apples with apples. There's so many times where contractors will price for work. And the example going back to my particular house is that I had a set of drawings done, I had some structural engineers drawings done, and I sent it out to 3 contractors, members of the FMB, and asked them to do a single story extension, kitchen knock through, typical. So I received a price back for a contract that was fully broken down at 180k. And the next price I received was a WhatsApp message that said 80 grand. What does that include? What does that include? So that's why the importance of that schedule of work is to make sure that the contractors are pricing apples with apples. And also, again, I talk about, is there a pricing document available? Some schemes you may see that come out from a quantity surveyor, and I'll have quantities, how you can price. I think that's a really good way of working out whether you should price for a scheme as well. Schedule work, make sure it's clear. What am I including for? What am I not including for? You'll see typically on, for example, do I include a kitchen? Do I include for fixing a kitchen? Oh, they're having a bathroom. Do I include for WC? What WC spec? My advice at that point would be to exclude those particular items and say subject to client choices. You probably want to keep your price a little bit lower at the start and then build up if there is not that schedule of work, but being super clear of what you're allowing for. Number 4 is a contract. Are there contract conditions and requirements? Again, really important to understand the contractual agreement that you're going into. Understand that the FMB have a contract document that is set up for its members, which is fantastic. Typically, you will find that quantity surveyors like us will ask for a JCT to go in place. Reason being, FMB is put together by the FMB, which does weight that slightly towards the contractor side of things, whereas the JCT is probably a more recognised. Well, it is a more recognised within the sector. So again, just making sure the contract conditions are set out and what the requirements. And I'll talk about contracts and why they're so important as well. So we're going to move into the pricing document itself. So the pricing document is typically broken down into overheads and profit, preliminaries, construction costs, which equals total. I've given you a sort of an example summary here of what we would present for our client. And this is broken down now into the construction costs, net construction costs, which in this particular project is 3.4 million. Preliminaries, so preliminaries are the likes of site management, welfare facilities, toilets, if you're paying for the electrics while you're working, temporary lighting, all of those items that are added up into preliminaries. And then you'll have a main contractor's overheads and profit. And again, I'm going to talk about a couple of examples on different schemes of what we've seen as a quantity surveyor of how much those elements cost. So that breakdown, that net construction cost is typically broken down into an elemental summary. And I would recommend that you use this, even if there is no schedule of work in place. I would recommend that you break it down into these particular sections, from substructure to frame to upper floors. It's nice and clear. I've seen it many a time where it'll just say substructure 15,000 quid, superstructure 80,000 quid. Clients will like to know what they're paying for, what they're getting, what does it include. So the more detail, the better. And obviously, it also helps when you do valuation processes, when you're claiming for works that have been done. And how we then break this elemental summary down is, before I move into that, again, we're just demonstrating what our cost document looks like. We do develop a graph showing anticipated expenditure. Reason why we do this, again, is just when we sit down with our clients and they say, well, why is it so high? What have I specified to make it cost this much? It's very easy to have a snapshot. And 9 times out of 10, I'm sure you'll agree with me that the MEP, the FF&E, so FF&E is the kitchens, the sanitaries, it's all the nice joinery that they've chosen, is where the money comes into it. Mechanical, electrical and plumbing, again, rising costs currently is where we look into that sort of price. So we then generate the chance to look into certain elements, make changes, do something called value engineering to try and get that client's project back into budget. And then we'd go into a further breakdown now as well. And this is where we would break down all the quantities. We'd go through the labour rate of each quantity and work out the labour total, material rate, and sub rate would be the likes of plastering, tiling, etc., that we would break those down. Something I would take into account, and I usually get asked this question, is how do we know what the rate is, the labour rate for excavation for foundations? How do you know if it's £20? How do you know if it's £6? How do you know if it's £50 or it's £100? So that particular item here, in terms of the excavation for foundations, that can raise and decrease. So the smallest rate at the moment, so we're doing a set of 80 houses, which have got foundations everywhere, so heavy civil engineering. The rate for excavation is £6 a cubic metre on that job. And to put this into a different job, which is a underbuilt basement in the centre of London, the rate for that one is £120 a square metre. Sorry, a cubic metre. So you're thinking, how do I know? How do I know what to price when you're looking at your schemes? And what I'd suggest is you look at basic principles. You'll go into basic principles of how long things take. So a typical extension. So your typical extension, your rate is usually you'll be using a 1-tonner in the back of a garden, which has not got much room to work within, and you'll be working at about £30 to £40 a cubic metre. I'd be careful, because I know a lot of you are probably using spons. You might use spons to find your pricing books. Be careful that they could be based on that 80 home unit where it's £6 a cubic metre. So you do need to think these things through. Material rates are relatively straightforward. You'll find out, you'll know from your trades how much a 2x2 is, how much a cubic metre of concrete is, and you can build those costs up. But typically, this is how we would put a pricing document together. We break it right down into basic principles, all your hardcore concrete slab, your visqueens, your mesh. But again, just making sure we look at those quantities to make sure it's actually practical If you're doing handballing, you've got to handball the MOT through the house because it's a terrace house, it's going to cost more than what it would be if you're being able to drop the ton bags next to where you need to go. So they're basic things that we'd highlight as looking at to make sure you get that pricing document right. So what to think about when pricing a job. So start with how much you're paying your tradespeople. Take it down. Let's look at carpenters. Let's look at mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Just to give you a couple of rates at the moment. So, we'll go from Cheshire into London, so you can see the differences between. So let's say at the moment in our Altrincham office, which is close to Manchester Airport, you'll typically be paying a chippy £260 a day, £280 a day on bespoke buildings. If you're looking in central London, we see £350, £360 a day. Similar rates in mechanical and electrical. Mechanical and electrical, you'll see £300 a day. In electrical and mechanical, and then you'll see 360, sometimes 380 if you're in the middle of central London. So what I'm saying here is, let's have a look at your supply chain. Let's see how much you're charging, or that you're being charged by your subcontractors, and making sure that they work through. If you're plastering a room, is your plaster on £220 a day? How many days is that going to take? How do we build that back into a rate? So I'd say that's very important to understand. I also look at, can you obtain quotes from the supply chain? So again, this is about covering risk. So if we're pricing a job on your behalf, what we do is we go out to the supply chain. We go out to the electrics, we go out to the windows and doors, we'll go out to the plasterer, the tiler, and ask them at tendering stage how much this is going to cost. Again, because when you move into that scheme, you understand that you have got a quote. It's covering risk. The next question is how much overheads and profit should you apply? On the next slide, we're going to have a look at overheads and profit. And we're going to decide what is an overhead and what with the profit. I'm going to give you some examples from smaller schemes under 100k, what the profit looks like, right up to £5 million schemes, and what the overheads and profit would look like in that particular project. Big one for me, and we talk about how do you make more money on a scheme. It's not always about pricing the job correctly. That's one point. The second point is how you manage that job. Do you have the right team in place to run a successful project? Are they efficient in how they order? Are they making sure that they place orders for the windows and doors in time, so you're not waiting 6 to 8 weeks longer when your windows and doors should be going in? It's making sure you can program that job. And when we talk about prelims, we need to make sure that they're priced correctly as well. You have to, it's horses for courses is what I would say on prelims. So if we're pricing a £5 to £10 million job, you'll have a full suite of prelims. You'll have site managers, you'll have site labourers, and you'll build that through. If you're doing an extension project, I'd imagine that a lot of people that build an extension projects are on the tools. However, you will have that one day out of that week when you combine it, when you're making the phone calls for the materials, you'll bring the subcontractors in, so that should be paid. So you could put an element of management in there for one day a week. So these are things you really need to be careful on and really think through. The welfare facilities, if you're paying a quantity surveyor to do your valuations, they can form preliminaries. Again, just to give you a guide, if we're pricing preliminaries on a scheme of, let's say, £1 million, rule of thumb, it'll be about 12% of the net construction costs. I'd typically see as that value comes down, it might raise to 15% around that sort of number. So again, a sense check just to check you're covering your prelims to run that particular scheme. How do you price risk items? So risk items may be items such as client wants a crittle door. They're all in fashion. You don't know what crittle door they want. Is it an aluminium lookalike crittle door? Is it actually crittle? So you can put things in called provisional sums, and you'll list those provisional sums. And a provisional sum is something that can change post-contract, but you will get paid the exact cost of that provisional sum plus your overheads and profit. Really important. Again, fluctuation. We saw more provisional sums sneaking in after COVID, and obviously just in inflation right now, is that certain items cannot be guaranteed price until time of order. It was being accepted by quantity surveyors because it's not fair to pass that risk onto contractors if, for example, the steel work was changing daily. It was changing daily. So I would highlight items such as that as being provisional sums. Again, tiles, kitchens, if you're asked to price it, put a provisional sum next to it if you have not got a guaranteed price. Qualifications and exclusions. Again, how many times even my next door neighbour knocked on and said, oh, I didn't realise my job was 20% more because the contractor did not tell me it excluded VAT. So he went with a different contractor. So again, a clear list of qualifications, exclusions. It's about being clear with the client, making sure they understand what you've been allowing for. Remember, most clients are laymen and they do not understand construction, and they think they get a fixed cost. They think it's a fixed cost unless you tell them what that includes. So I'd be really, really clear on what you've included in that. Typically, when we're doing extensions now, we see a simple, let's say a simple box extension. If we're pricing it up, we will exclude the likes of tiling, we'll exclude the likes of kitchens, we'll exclude the supply of sanitary ware because we have no specification. We can allow for fixing a toilet and a sink if it's shown on the drawing, but we wouldn't allow for fixing the kitchen because we don't know what we're fixing. We don't want to put our contractors at risk by, stating, oh, we'll fix a kitchen for £1,000, and then they turn up with a bespoke island unit, bespoke seats. It doesn't work. So my advice here, if it doesn't state for you to allow it, I'd exclude it. Because what will happen to you guys is the client will expect post-contract, oh, why aren't you fitting my kitchen? And you get into a problem post-contract, and you don't want to get into arguments. The second to last one is, how do you present your pricing document to the client? So again, just going back to my house example, is a WhatsApp text for 80 grand acceptable to say this is what my project is going to be? Or is a full itemized breakdown telling the client exactly what he's getting? Is that better? So again, the pricing document, clarity with the client, I think you've got a better opportunity of winning the work. This last one is, what opportunities does your pricing document present in the post-contract phase? So you've agreed your price, you're really clear with the client, you may then increase scope. So the client may ask you, the contractor, can you decorate my bedroom for me? Yeah, no problem. That wasn't in my pricing documents, as you can see here. However, the price will be X. Again, clarity. The amount of times we've been in situations where contractors rang us and said, yeah, but the client didn't realize I've done the skirting board, I've fixed the roof light, I've done outside decking, and now he's complaining. Or he or she is complaining about that. What does that pricing document do? It shows the client exactly what you've allowed for. Really simple. No problem. I can do this for you. Here's the cost for it. So I'd say clear pricing document with qualifications and exclusions, and any risk item, just put provisional sum next to it. You'll be covered post-contract in that scenario. Just talking about overhead and profit, I'm going to share the PDF, I believe is going to be sent to everyone on the webinar. So just go through the hub staff. I found an interesting link of how to actually calculate true construction overheads and profit. So there's a link in here that you can look at. Just to give you a bit of insight on recently tendered overheads and profit rates. Again, residential extensions, alterations. So you can see this project value here. Hopefully that's out of the way. And you'll see that the 15% on a £225,000 job. And on a £5 million scheme that we've just tendered in Wimbledon, the overheads and profit margin for 10%. Still high. You look at that and you make 500k on a £5 million job, and the difference is only 5% between the two. One thing we see on the luxury home side of the business is that it becomes quite painful, and I'm sure you can all agree with that, with clients changing their minds constantly and the amount of admin work that you have to put in order to provide. How much does those windows cost? How much, I want to change my mind, how much do those sockets cost? They're all important factors. They're all things that you might want to build into your prelims or exclude qualifications. Again, it's key just being super clear in your pricing documents of what you've allowed for. It gives you that opportunity. Just in case anyone is a joiner on here, or a subcontractor, or a plasterer, just typical rates. Recently we just priced a joinery for a carpenter, and that was doing all skirting boards, hanging all the doors. It was labor only. They were doing the first fixed timbers in terms of rafters, joist hangers, etc. Job was about 50,000 quid. He was in at 30% OHP, and he won that on a labor only basis. So again, your overheads, use that. Everyone's overhead is going to be different because you'll have a true running cost of your business. Work that out, and then your profit will increase and raise depending on what job you're working on. As I said, the smaller the project, the profits are usually higher, and the larger the project, the profits become lower. Just in comparison with the 80 unit development that we have, the overheads and profit on that for an assisted living development are at 6%. They're at 6% because they come easier to knock out. Terrace housing, couple of apartments, 6%, bigger contractors. So just that gives you a bit of a range of what you're looking at in terms of overheads and profit. So some pricing options. What do you do? I think time to do it. I think you talked about previously yourself, pricing software or professional consultants, all of which come with pros and cons. Yourself, it's cheap. Cons, might get it wrong, takes a lot of time. Pricing software, again, I've seen a few. I'm not going to name them on this webinar. However, I've seen a few where we've had situations that contractors have come to us as professional consultants and say, what do I do here? We had crystal doors that I use that all the time because they're in fashion, but let's say whatever, bifolding doors, the specification was a 20k door. And I've just realized the pricing software has priced them at 3,000 quid. What do I do? What do I do? And the fact of that matter is, if you've gone into contract and that specification was there stating you do them for 3 grand, you should be doing them for £3,000. So I'd be careful with pricing software. I think it's good for what it does for 59 quid, 99 quid, but sometimes you pay for what you get. Professional consultants as well. I mean, you're getting into a situation where you're working with a person, you're working with the likes of, a chartered individual. The pros are you're going to get it right. They're going to understand that. Hopefully, maximise return in terms of making sure exclusions, qualifications are in place. However, it's expensive. So I think that's the thing that I'd point out here is that obviously professional consultants are great, but they're going to cost you money. So that's why I'm going to talk about what jobs to price, maybe what ones go to a professional consultant, what you do yourself, etc. So I thought it would be good if we thought about what we think would increase probability of winning more work as a QS point that advises the client. So we talked about it previously as professional submission. It's clarity, clear assumptions, qualifications, and exclusions. I think CVs and portfolio are really important as well. If you're super competent in what you do and you're proud of your team, your site manager, I think if you show that to a client, I think that would go 1,000 miles, again, with relevant projects. I recently had a site manager come out of a larger project, a team setting up his own business, and he asked me, what do you think? I said, well, look at your CV, look at your personal CV of what you've delivered. If you sat that in front of a client, would they think that's good? Would they feel confident in what you do? And the answer is yes. So tell them about it. Referrals. Most of our business is always based on referrals. So include those references and opportunity to speak to past clients. So when you meet a client, you give a professional submission, clear assumptions, you've got a CV at the back to say exactly who you are, what we've done before, and here you go. If you want to speak to any of our clients previously, here's the details for them. I think that will push you ahead of the competition. We also looked at some increasing opportunities in terms of how do you get more work, how do you do that? And I thought I'd list out a couple of items here. So approaching local architects, establishing relationships, they'll be your repeat businesses. People like us, local quantity surveyors, establish relationships. So if you come to the likes of us, we have a pre-qualification questionnaire that will ask you certain questions, again, going through that CVs, going through health and safety, doing due diligence in terms of turnover. I talked about a healthy balance sheet at the bottom of the page. Very important right now, considering the world that the economic climate that we're living in. Referrals and word of mouth associations, again, such as FMB, professional websites and social media following. And another one is a chartered status such as the Chartered Institute of Building, MCIOB. Again, it increases trust in your profession. It goes a long way. It goes a long way, and I know the MCIOB because a few of our guys have done it as well. It's is straightforward enough, but it does teach you some good things about running successful practices and construction companies. Next one is just talking about what to price and when to price. Again, questions that I ask my clients. So when my clients come in, we have good relationships with our clients, and we ask them, go and find out how many contractors are pricing that scheme. Because sometimes the QSs won't tell you. However, if they do, and you find out that you're one of 10, maybe the QSs certainly won't tell you, but I guess the client would, because again, we're going back to layman. How many people are tendering this client? And if they say 10 people are tendering this, already you've got a 1 in 10 chance. You know, you will typically, when we send out a tender to contractors, it's 4, maximum 5. So again, ask that question, how many are doing it? Planning, making sure that scheme has planning or require planning. Many of our clients asking us questions of whether we should put a pricing for something, which I respond no, because there's not enough specification. However, there may be indications here where you show willing. So for example, one of my clients just today has said, you know, it's cost plan stage. It was a big gymnasium. He had a good relationship with the client. So I said, okay, well, let's put call it a ballpark and estimate. Let's put high level estimates in. Let's say it's £500,000. That may lead into a negotiated status as well. So there are sometimes pros to going in early. You might establish that relationship with the client at an earlier stage. You've given an indication of how much that job's going to cost, and then you get into a negotiation. Once that information flows through, you would then provide a breakdown to those costs and get to the client and say, okay, you know, it's 560k. That might be an option as well. But please bear in mind that the con is that it's going to be paid at your price in order to do that negotiation, that cost. Tender documents. Do you have tender documentation enabling fair analysis of contractors' quotes? So again, just going back to basic principles of schedules of work, specifications, drawings, structural engineers' drawings, building control. So making sure that that's in place. So when the client gets the price back, we all know most of the time, the first thing any person does, bottom line, what does it look like? And what happens is, and I've seen it too many times, if people aren't doing their job properly or the client is not doing their own diligence, is they'll see one back at 100 grand, one at 180, one at 220. 220 is gone, they're straight in, focus at 100k. And they don't know what's included or excluded in that. So again, just let's be nice and clear with the clients. Final one I've got here is suitable experience of deciding to tender a project. Again, we're brutally honest at Magnitude, and we will ask questions of our clients, i.e. our contractors. If they come in and say, I want to price a £10 million new build home, and we know they've only been doing 150 grand extensions, are you really going to be able to do that job? Are you really given a serious chance by your client here? So they'll be things that we would ask when deciding to tender a project. Section 6, I think we've got about 10 more minutes left, and we can go into questions. I think it'll be 5 to 10 minutes. So this is more so about protection, how to protect yourself. So number one is pricing correctly, tender for the works correctly, pricing compliantly, which obviously mitigates risks, those qualifications and exclusions, which comes into clear documentation and communication. And everyone seems to get scared of contracts, but I'd recommend on any job you do, you put a contract in place. Just in terms of pricing correctly, why that is important. Obviously, why is this going to maximize the profits you make, improve your business? So you're pricing correctly. It provides confidence that you're entering into a contract with a compliant bid, which increases the chance of making the profit margin you anticipated. I'm sure many of you have been into jobs where you say it feels about that, and you've gone into that. If you've got a price that's put properly, you've got a profit margin, it's set up properly, at least you're walking into that job knowing you're in the right place. The other thing it does is provides the benchmark to approach the supply chain, i.e. tender subcontract packages to increase margin percentage. You've now got a benchmark. So for example, on a single story extension, you've got a plastering rate. You've got a plastering rate in your pricing document that tells you you've got £5 grand for plastering. You can approach your supply chain and ask them for prices. that means you can make more margin. One might come back at 5.5, one might come back at 4.5, one might come back at 4. Go with a 4 or 4.5 after quality control. You made another £500 on that subcontract package as well. One thing I'd also state as well, and I see this regularly, is that main contractors get comfortable with the supply chain, which is fine because you've got quality control, you've got relationships, but sometimes just go out and get some prices from alternative supply chain and make sure you're paying the right money for your supply chains and they don't get comfy and it was just the same as the next job, same as the next job. That's going to suffer your margin because you have inflation that comes through. They'll be charging you inflation. Make sure that you're paying the right market rate as well. Number 3, the pricing correctly provides the basis of what your price includes. If there's no clear schedule of work, again, that qualification, the exclusion, simple, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, is I did not include decoration. You can see it here, it's excluded. However, if you want me to decorate your house, it's X. Number 4 is providing a document to make payment applications from, which is reducing the risk conflict. Again, so when you go and ask for a payment because you've done the substructure, you can see substructure, 90%, 100%, and it'll break it all down. So when you give that application to your client, they can see very clearly, okay, I was going to spend 10 grand on substructure. He's done the substructure, tick. So again, that's really clear. The other number 5 is provides the basis of claiming for variations to the contract scope. So going back to that decoration example, the other examples are, let's for example say that the structural engineer has stated that you have 600 by meter footings. It's found that you have to go deeper to 1.5 meter footings. You now have the rates per cubic meter for the additional dig that you need to make, the additional concrete that you need to make. It's a very simple calculation. What was the extra concrete? What was the extra meter cubic of excavation times by the rate that you've tendered on? Again, just gets rid of that conflict. I'm not charging any more clients. This is the rate I tendered on. I just had to do this extra. And I think that's where you will suffer in terms of, I know you 99% of you will just be doing the best for the clients as you can. And they ask mission creep. Can you just put that architrave on there? Or can you just put a new handle on here? You'll have a pricing document that states how much that is. I would always advise, do not carry out work until you've agreed a price. That's a number 1 mistake I see, and it's so easy. You'll go ahead, you'll do the work, then you'll come in with the price and they go, that's too much. Just do a process. Do a process that, okay, no problem, I'll decorate that room. The cost for decorating that room is £500. Do you agree? And wait for them to agree. Agree, £500, and away you go. It's documented. Contracts, again, super important between the parties. Again, it protects both parties and not always weighted towards the client. It's also weighted towards you. If the client doesn't pay you, what do you do? How do you get off site? How do you terminate? It defines that scope of work. It establishes the payment expectations. Very, very clear. FMB's contract, have not reviewed it in any detail, but I'd imagine it'll set out a payment expectation. I'm pretty sure as a QS, I've seen it before and tried to change it into a JCT. However, it makes sure it has clear defined rules, which I'm sure the FMB does, of when you make an application and when you get paid. And what happens if the client doesn't pay you? So again, that contract procedure is super important. Prevents understandings and ensures that quality of work. Documents and communication. I think this is number 1 as well on the smaller schemes. I just think it makes sure everyone is on the same page and understands those goals and requirements and expectations of the project. Again, it's going to stop those costly mistakes due to misunderstandings. The guy that's priced 80,000 quid for my extension, what's it include? If I go into contract with him, sign him up to £80,000, and I'm a clever QS and put a load of scope in that contract, he's then contracted to deliver that for 80k. So again, if he sent me exclusions, qualifications, this is what included, super. I know what I'm allowing for. It makes sure that legal requirements are met and all parties involved are protected. And again, I think it promotes trust between the stakeholders involved in that project. Asking for, it's not a bad thing to ask for extras for decoration, for fixing a kitchen, change the client's brought in a vanity unit instead of a standalone sink. It's not a problem to ask for additional cost if it is costing you more money. I think the communication, it helps to streamline that project, make it more efficient by ensuring everyone is aware of the progress and tasks that they need to be completed. And big thing, documentation reduces the likelihood of disputes and provides proper paper trails should a dispute arise. So I talked about, we have an adjudication arm within the business. It does come back, and we have seen a few schemes where it's just WhatsApp message after WhatsApp message. You said this, you said that. Great, it helps. It helps what you can show what people have agreed to. So hopefully those sorts of protection measures will help you in the future of making sure you provide a proper pricing document, documented in terms of exclusions, qualifications, the price is put together properly, which will hopefully lead to more successful projects that you work on, which then just brings us hopefully nicely at 5:15 now, brings us nicely into a bit of a Q&A. So welcome any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin. There was an awful lot packed in there, a lot for people to sort of process. I can imagine some people might want to watch the recording again just to go over some of those details. We've run a series of webinars in the past with a lawyer who wrote the FMB suite of contracts, and there's an awful lot of overlap between what you've said and what she said to members as well, about the importance of having a process for recording variations and in order to avoid any confusion or dispute about that. And I couldn't agree more with you about not doing extras for nothing, because a lot of members seem to think that that will it weighs in the balance, you know, it buys them some goodwill with the client, but it doesn't stop the client from not paying the final bill and lodging a dispute case and all of that you know, that goes with that, all of the hassle and time and cost that goes with that. So it's probably because consumers don't understand the true cost of getting building work done. So when you do a variation and you do the work for free, that encourages them to think that it doesn't cost you anything. So all of that is really useful information, Martin. We've got a couple of questions. So earlier on, when you were talking about provisional sums, one Alexandru asked about prime cost, and he was saying that an architect and client only allowed him a variation of 15% of provisional sums. Does that sound reasonable, or could you recap a bit about that prime cost and provisional sums bit?
Yeah, again, so when we're putting a pricing document together, it's interesting that it states it's only 15%. So when you're putting your pricing document together in your qualifications and exclusions, I would qualify, or we do qualify for our contractors, that any provisional sums that are given are assumed to include X amount of overheads and profit. So again, it goes back to that documentation and clarity, is that you would state that. Obviously, it depends on the size of the project that you're working on, but I would state now in your qualifications that it would include 17.5% or 20% to stop that dispute arising.
Yeah. Okay. Someone else has asked something interesting. Would you always reveal your overheads and profit to the clients that you're tendering to? Do you think it creates transparency for the tendering process, or is it a chance for the client to chip away at the price?
Interesting. So when we put our pricing together, so the contractors that we work with, our clients as a contractor, and we're estimating, we send you the document that shows you the line of the 15%. And when we do our client copy, it creates a gross. So it doesn't disclose what that margin is. So I agree. I completely agree, because the first thing that they do, the client, is, oh, we knock 5% off it. Oh, wow, you're making 15% on me. You know, they don't appreciate that you should, as a business, be making profit. So the answer is no, don't disclose it, do a gross copy and say profit is included, or don't put a line at all.
Yeah. So include it for your own calculation purposes, but don't share it with them.
You want to see it as a business, because it's interesting. I've worked with a lot of contractors of how they actually run accounts and how they actually reconcile. A lot of people will get it to the end of the year and go, sit with the accountant and say, did I make any money? I think if you can have a tracker against each job, so the larger contractors will have trackers against each jobs, and they'll do reconciliation of how much they're making, so at least they know they're in their profit. And if they're not in profit, it means they can make decisions on the next jobs of how they price, how they adjust to become more profitable in the future.
Yeah, it's always important to know those numbers, isn't it? Because, I don't know why people think that people are in business, because profit shouldn't be a dirty word. You can't keep the business going if you don't make a profit, can you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So someone's asking about that piece you were talking about, winning work and presenting to the client, things like your CV and that kind of thing. We would also say that a lot of FMB members will put a copy of the code of conduct into their sorry, that's my phone. Put a copy of the FMB code of conduct in with their tender, just to explain to the client, these are the standards that I'm held to as an FMB member. I am sorry about that. Should have put my phone on silent before we started. So, yes, this member is asking, what courses or qualifications do you recommend to get and have on your CV as the owner of the business? Things like site management, project management, what do you recommend? Health and safety courses? And he's just generally asking about how can he get more educated about cash flow management and using contracts. So there's a lot in that question. Yeah. So hold on. We actually did a webinar last week with the CIOB to talk about how FMB members can get MCIOB membership and an FCIOB as well. So that will be available to FMB members on our website if you are a member and want to have a look at that. But yeah, otherwise, Martin, you did mention CIOB. Is there anything else that you think members should think about?
Yeah, just I think just to experience. I'm just looking at that question now. I'm just going to break it down. So, what courses or qualifications would you recommend and have on your CV as the owner and the main guy? So, I think basically CV also shows experience. It's not always about qualifications. To be qualified by experience. So, state the amount of jobs that you've worked on of a similar nature, how successful they were. I did talk about referrals. So powerful. So if you've got referrals, state those on your CV. But the MCIOB, I think that's great for building, Chartered Institute of Building. I do look at that, and I'll be completely honest. I do see it, and I think, all right, the owners of MCIOB, they have to sit by certain principles. We're chartered QSs. We have to go through a rigorous training regime in terms of ethics, and it's similar to the MCIOB. So I think that's a good one to look into. Where and how can I get educated about contracts? Mainly, I get proposed the JCT Minor Works 2016. So there are multiple. There's multiple lawyers that do these, and they do it for free. Webinars, which again I'll speak to Kerrigan's. Kerrigan's do ours, so that might be another one for the FMB members that can help with that. And I'm sure that the lawyers that put the contracts together in terms of the FMB contract can do that too. We've got documentation on the JCT Minor Works, so we can send that over. Any ideas about cash flow management? So that's.
I think that's a whole separate webinar, isn't it? We need to do another one about
cash flow management. I do feel sorry for you guys because it's horrendous as a contractor, in and out. You don't get any advance payments, which is something that I've maybe look for, is advance payments in your JCT FMB contract. See if you can get a mobilization deposit. Be careful for obvious reasons, but that's something you can look at. And then other QS companies, just like yours, advise that for jobs up to 500k, profit and overheads are around 30%. I don't agree, but it's up to others. I don't see anyone 500k jobs making 150k when they're going to tender to win work. And we're tendering all the time. But if you can get 30%, brilliant. They sound like good QS companies to work with. So.
Yeah, and actually Helen's asked a similar question about if she knows her overheads, what would in typical industry level of profit be, which on similar lines, and not 30%, I don't think would be typical, would it?
No, but you've got to work out. So if you are going back into those 30%, I know contractors make 30%, but they go through it's against your net cost as well. So it also adds up against that supply chain management. So you've gone in with a price at 15%. Can you make more money by 5 or 10% as well by supply chain management? Get your plasterer cheaper, get your tiler cheaper, M&E, tender them out. Don't just go to Joe Bloggs down the road because he's used you for 5 years. That's where you can maximize that profit potential plus the variation. We make a fortune for contractors in a variation situation because that's when you can maximize that situation. So again, document clear communication.
Yeah, so important, isn't it? So someone has asked, what would you do? Because we talked about not showing the overheads and profits to the client. Now somebody's asking, what if the client asks to see them? Well, I guess that's down to how you communicate with the client, isn't it? What would you say on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, just saying what Hayley said, is it's not a bad word. You know, you want to be a profitable business. There's other arguments about we had a situation with fluctuations, you know, during COVID where prices were raising, you know, by 20 or 30k, and it was let's say for a steel package. And we'll get into a situation where the contractor would come into a meeting room and I'd be the bad QS saying, you know, contracted, you're due to this. But the contractor would say, well, I'm going to go bust. I'm going to go bust. If I don't get this additional money, I'm going to go bust. So what happens then? I have to advise my client that you're going to have to get a new contract to come in to pay today's rates and then put everything back. So it doesn't benefit them. It got into a position there where you're in a room and they negotiated 10 or 15 grand, you know, half, and I give a contribution. And the reason why I'm saying this is that you should be working on jobs with overheads and profit. You don't want to be working to the bone, and clients should understand that you are a business. You want a proper business with proper accreditations, pricing properly to carry out their works. Why do they want to screw you to the ground? Because they may end up with a half-finished property. So I think if the client was asking to see their overheads and profit, that's fine. You can state that you're in industry standards of 10 or 15%.
Yeah, I mean, there's several things that you've said throughout this that sort of imply that a lot of clients need educating, don't they? Because often they go into a refurbishment or an extension project. It's the first time they've ever done that. They don't understand the process and where to start with it and all of that, and what kind of margins people need to make to keep their businesses sustainable. And so they tend to go for the cheapest quote sometimes. I mean, we produced some letters that FMB members can give to clients with their quotes that explain that, you know, I might not be the cheapest contractor that's quoting for this work, but I will be one of the best and I will work to standards and all of that. But not every client is persuaded by that or reads the documentation properly or all of that.
So just rest assured that so for example, when an analysis comes in for us as a QS and we have prices that come in, the likelihood is if we've got a job and our cost plan states that it's £3 million, say, and we get a price that comes in at 1.8 and the other three at 2.9, 3, 3.2, the 1.9 one goes away because they haven't priced it properly. So that's where if you're nice and clear, I know a lot of the members are just dealing direct with the client. But if you're dealing with architects who are doing that analysis, they should be highlighting. It's called a normalization process. They should be normalizing tenders. So that 1.9 should come back up to allow for certain items as well. Yeah.
Okay, we've got one last question because we're almost coming up to the 1 hour mark. So we won't keep everyone too much longer, but somebody's asked about, what about builder's contingency? How do I present that to the client? How can I keep that all to myself? Is that not something that's worked in with your overheads rather than
different rates here? So builder's contingency, that would typically be on design and build. So it's called a design development contingency, where you're taking responsibility for design. You would build that into you. However, on a traditional contract, you are pricing the specification and the drawings that are provided by the client. So the client should be held in their own contingency in case that additional depth of footing needs to go down. In a traditional, just if you're told to go 600 by a meter, and then you end up doing 1.5, you should be charging the client. So you shouldn't have to keep a contingency for going additional depth of foundation unless you put on a design and build. So I wouldn't be holding contingencies, because it's a competitive market as well. It's a
Yeah,
competitive market, so you don't want to be putting additional contingency on that's not required.
yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, that's been so interesting. I honestly think we could spend a whole day on all of this, because there's lots of areas that you can drill down into, isn't there? So I hope that members have found this really interesting who've attended today. So, and I just want to say thank you to everybody for attending. And also thank you very much to Martin for his presentation and for answering all of those questions. And as he said earlier, we'll put contact details and copies of the slides and everything in the follow-up email, together with information about forthcoming webinars from the FMB that you might want to join. And there is also the previous one about MCIOB qualifications on the FMB website for members to look at. So yeah, it's been fascinating, and thank you very much to everybody, and we'll leave it there. Goodbye, have a nice evening. Thank you.